Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
True Crime Edition, part 1 of 3. You will be listening to this case for the next 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. But only 3 times.
Yeah.
Possibly 3. I could possibly get 2 and 3 combined, but prepare for 3, certainly.
Yeah.
And welcome to season 3
Yes.
of
Um,
The Housewife Did
yes, we've got some new shirts. So buy them and then you can wear them, and when people ask about them, you can say they're from this podcast, and then you can subscribe, share it with those people.
It. Mm-hmm. It's true. All right, folks. Buckle in. Today we are starting to cover a case that everyone knows and everyone has opinions on. In fact, Netflix just released a new docuseries over our Christmas break about this one. I promise
He just covered it.
I already had it planned, and Mary said, ooh.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
but
Crime Junkie just covered it, but she was like, I was not going to cover this until I could talk to the man himself. We don't have that reservation.
No. So, we are getting into the JonBenet Ramsey case. Please don't take this as an opportunity to bully us. Just because we've chosen to cover a popular case does not mean we're not amateurs, okay? And you could not believe how much information there is on this case. So while I believe that you probably have strong opinions, please be nice to me. If you can't tell, I'm scared. So, JonBenet Ramsey was 6 years old when she was reported missing on December 26th, 1996, in Boulder, Colorado. To this day, her case remains unsolved, unless you're the guy on TikTok who saw her in the store.
And then she just drank the LaCroix.
The people moose. But in real life, this case is unsolved. Now, while it is going to be impossible to go into this one with no preconceived notions, we are going to give it our darndest to just lay out all of. Yep, Mary too. Mary's going to try to hold back her preconceived notions. We're going to go through all the information, even if that means we change our minds on things. Yes? Can we pledge?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I won't lie, the Netflix show did have me change my mind a little bit. I was like, wait.
Hold up. Yeah. JonBenet Ramsey was born on August 6th, 1990 in Atlanta, Georgia. She was the second child of JonBenet Ramsey and Patricia or Patsy Ramsey. Her brother Burke was born 3 years before her. Burke and JonBenet had half-siblings as well from their father's previous marriage, Beth, Melinda, and John Andrew, who would have all been adults by the time of JonBenet's death. JonBenet had been competing in pageants for a few years, something that Patsy and her sister had done in their younger years as well. She had won titles such as America's Royale Miss, Little Miss Colorado, that sounds kind of prestigious, and National Tiny Miss Beauty.
Also, Patsy Ramsey was an Alpha Zeta Delta. Sister.
JonBenet Ramsey was reported missing by her mother, Patsy Ramsey, at 5:52 a.m. on December 26th. The family lived in an over 7,000 square foot home in Boulder, Colorado, which most recently sold for over $7 million. The home had 5 bedrooms, 5 full bathrooms, and 3 half bathrooms. It was 4 total floors if you include the basement, which the basement itself is quite expansive. I have a map of the basement that I'll put on Instagram. On Patsy's way down from her 3rd floor bedroom on that early morning, Patsy found a ransom note lying on the stairs on the main level, and she immediately called 911. I am going to play that 911 call for you.
Emergency. Police. What's going on? 515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hi, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter? 6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old. How long ago was it? I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's Does it say who took her? What? Does it say who took her? I don't know. There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? It says FBTC. Victory. Please. Okay, what's your name? Are you Kathy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh my God, please. Okay, girl. There's somebody. I am, honey. Please. Take a deep breath. Please. Okay. Hurry. Kathy.
Okay. I won't lie. Overall, to me, it sounds like a 911 call.
Yeah.
From when you just found out your daughter was kidnapped.
Yeah.
So, we'll talk later about what people think they hear when they strip it, but that's our basis.
Yeah.
After hanging up with 911, Patsy called two couples that she and John were friends with, and they came right over as well. Some people find these decisions interesting based on the content of the 3-page ransom letter. It read, Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good Southern common sense of yours. It is up to you now, John. Victory, SBTC. So, obviously, what I mean by people find her decisions weird is like this person is making it, if she believes her daughter was kidnapped based on this letter, this person is making it very clear that they are watching her and that if they see her talking to people, if they see her alerting people, they will kill her daughter. What are your thoughts on this? Like, because when I talked to Billy was like, I would immediately look at that letter and I think they're bluffing. They've either already killed her or they don't have, they're not going to. So I'm going to call the police. I don't care. So like, what would you do?
I don't know. I feel like what they do is like criticized to no end, but I feel like I don't know, like a lot of these like high profile like cases with ransom notes, they do believe and they don't want to involve the police because they're afraid. Like what's that one from like the 1920s that like they kidnap a baby out of the window, but like it's similar, like there's a ransom note and they don't want to contact police because it says that they'll kill the baby, and they never solve that one. And so like I think that like that's valid to be like, no, this does happen, like people do take kids and demand ransom and they do kill them if police get involved. But I just think that like I don't know, because from an outside perspective, I think the circumstances are strange, like that it's written on their notepad from their kitchen with their pen, and like that it's like the exact amount from his bank account. It just feels very like performative, not like on their part, but like the letter, it feels false to me. But I also think that if my child were missing, that I would not be in a frame of mind to think all of those things through.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, basically, like, the parts I think are weird. Basically, when Patsy made this call to police, she didn't mention to 911, like, hey, they told us not to call the police. Could you come quietly? So police and then all of their friends start pulling up to their home with like no subtlety. So I think that where I would land is somewhere in that middle. Like, of course, I'm going to involve the police. I would risk breaking the kidnapper's rules to involve the police because I cannot do this on my own. However, I would say, can you come in unmarked cars or at least with your shits off? And I also would not call 4 of my friends to come over too.
Right.
Like I find weird that you are like involving everyone, but like I think the question that people struggle with is, does that mean they're the ones that did it, so they know the note is fake, so that's why they never actually considered the note? Or to your point, like, are you in such a frantic state that you're just making bad decisions?
Right.
You know? So when the police arrived, the ransom note had been moved from the stairs and it had been laid across the floor to read, since, you know, it was 3 freaking pages long.
Right.
An officer moved it back to the stairs as close as he could to where Patsy says she found it, and they took evidence photos. Not really evidence anymore, because that's not where it was. But cool. The police checked JonBenet's bedroom, and they found her bed unmade. They closed that room off and instructed the family that no one should go in. Shortly after they arrived, the police were expecting that the suspect would be calling soon as they approached 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m. People present that day have said that the Ramseys did not seem to be looking forward to a call. Another piece
I don't
of
know
like,
that I would be looking forward to a call.
Not looking forward to it like fondly, but I mean they were not
looking
forward to
it.
it. Yeah, they were not like in any way like expecting that to happen. Which again makes some people believe like because they knew there was no call, because they knew there was no kidnapper.
Right.
Or are they distracted? Are they just busy? Are they just doing other stuff? You know, I don't know. Sergeant Reichenbach walked through the house, including the basement. There was only one area in the house that he didn't see. There's a door in the far end of the basement leading to a back room, which was referred to as the wine cellar, although it is said that it was not used to house wine. So, you know. He attempted to open it, but when he was met with resistance, he pulled it back shut and he went back upstairs. Detective Steve Thomas wrote that Officer French and John Ramsey's friend, Fleet White, also checked that door. Fleet White was walking around the house and made his way back down to the basement where he found the lights on. He noticed a broken window and a piece of glass on the floor. He picked it up and placed the large piece of glass on the ledge. There was a suitcase under the broken window that looked like it could have been there as like a step. He moved around the suitcase and a bunch of other objects to look for more pieces of glass. He attempted to open the white door again, but he couldn't find any light switches, so he closed and latched the door behind him and went back upstairs. One detective at the scene, Linda Arndt, asked John Ramsey and his friend Fleet White to go and search the house again from top to bottom. She did not offer any police supervision, and she said in a later interview that she was really just trying to give the men something to do. Arndt says that she had called multiple times to the police department asking for backup because she was the only detective left in the house with the family, 4 of their friends, and their pastor. This is 10:30 a.m. No, I wonder if they all left because no call came in. But now she's handling 7. I don't know if Burke's still there at this point, but she's handling 7+ people that are basically just busybodying. And so she's like, just go check the house again. Like, tell me if you find anything that we should note. The Boulder Police Department was fairly short-staffed, having many officers off the day after Christmas. Arndt was told when she called that her coworkers were in a meeting, but that her request had been received. They said, heard. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon when she gave the men the instructions to just go look for anything. So actually, it wasn't at 10:30. She had been alone from 10:30 to 1. And at 1, she was like, get out of my face. So she said, go look for anything out of the ordinary. Don't touch or disturb anything. She says that John went directly to the basement. So I guess he thought, top to bottom, I'm going to do bottom to top.
That's what everyone says. He says, well, I took it literally, but backwards.
Great.
Like, what?
So he goes directly to the basement, and very shortly after, Linda hears Fleet White yelling for an ambulance. From various accounts, we can piece together that the men opened that white door to the wine cellar. John unlatched and opened the door, quickly letting out a scream. Earlier, Fleet White, as well as some police, had gone down to this room, but they had been unable to see in the dark. Is this just because John knew where the light switch was? It's his house. Like, right. I don't think that's super abnormal. John carried JonBenet's body upstairs and laid her down. He asked Linda Arndt if she was dead, which she told him she was. Arndt says that when she saw her being carried upstairs, it was obvious that JonBenet had been dead for a while. I think it's still fair for him to ask.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do? Her body was found with her arms above her head, duct tape over her mouth, and bindings on her wrist. There was also a garrote around her neck, fashioned out of a broken paintbrush. Detective Arndt moved JonBenet's body in front of the family's Christmas tree. John Ramsey went and grabbed a throw blanket and tossed it over his daughter's body so that Patsy didn't have to see her. After this blanket was placed there, Detective Arndt made multiple adjustments to the blanket. A family friend came along and put a sweatshirt over JonBenet's feet. So now, along with the many other mistakes made at keeping this crime scene preserved, there were new fibers and possibly new DNA just being introduced all over JonBenet's body.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm. It is said that when John and Fleet entered the basement and John saw the broken window, he recalled, I'm assuming out loud, that he had broken the window a few months prior when he accidentally locked himself out and he had forgotten to get it fixed. So just this open entrance to my home.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah. Fleet White would claim that John Ramsey screamed before the lights had actually come on in that back room, which is a huge point of contention for people. JonBenet's body was also said to be covered in a sheet in that basement room, so people find it strange that John would be able to recognize the body of his daughter before actually seeing her. Let me play devil's advocate here.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like there were mere seconds between the lights and the screen, either way. So Fleet White's in a stressful situation. They're finding a dead girl. Is it possible that he just is getting it wrong? That the scream happened directly after the lights versus the lights directly after the scream? Yeah, it is. Second, if I found a small body covered in a sheet when I believe that my daughter is missing, I'd probably scream before I had confirmed it too.
I was about to say that. Like, in
I need
what
to know.
world? Like, I
know
know
where
this is a
Burke
wine
is.
cellar. I know that a sheet crumpled up on the floor doesn't make sense. I didn't put it there.
I also
I'm
know it's the
scared.
only room we haven't looked in for my kid yet.
I'm scared.
Yeah, I know where Burke is. We're literally walking around looking for signs of what happened to my daughter. Oh, that looks like the size of a 6-year-old.
Right.
I'm screaming. From the moment that 911 call was made, the Boulder police and everyone else involved treated this as a true kidnapping and ransom situation. Except, arguably, the Ramseys, who never seemed to be anticipating the phone call. Of course, the best practice would have been to treat the entire house as a crime scene, which technically it was either way, but to be careful as if a homicide could have occurred there. That is not obviously what happened. We've only made it this far, and you might be thinking, of course this case hasn't been solved. There should not have been extra people in the home who were literally walking around the kitchen and cleaning up, like they're like Lysol wiping things. They're eating, they're hanging out, they're touching stuff. People should not have been allowed to walk around the house searching on their own without police. Originally, one officer even came with a canine, but did not use it to search the home or the property, or else it likely would have tracked JonBenet from her bedroom to the basement.
Yeah.
But they didn't think they needed to do that, which is crazy to me, because even if it's a kidnapping, you could track it like out to a road. You know, like they do that with Summer Wells, like here's where it's at, you know what I mean? Like, so what did we bring the canine for? He just wanted to get out of the house. He wanted some socialization. Before we get into the autopsy findings and the continued failures of evidence collection, I want to talk about what the Ramseys were doing the night before and what they had planned for the 26th. So the Ramsey family had been at the White's Christmas party the night before. Patsy and John say that the kids were back home and in bed by 10 p.m. John Ramsey made one claim that when they got home that night, he checked all of the home's doors and made sure everything was locked up. It is reported that he told this to officers on 3 different occasions. Later, he would claim he never said that. One of those things that I'm like, what would be the harm in you saying that? I'm not sure. If all the doors were locked, and assuming that there were no signs of forced entry, which there were, but let's pretend that that window wasn't open for a second, police had to consider who had keys to the house. The only people with keys outside of the immediate family would have been Patsy's mother and the Ramsey family housekeeper. John also said that the night of December 25th, he had tucked JonBenet in and read her a bedtime story. This is another claim that he would later walk back. He said, actually, I did not read her a bedtime story. Again, what's the significance of that? I don't know. Patsy said that the family was heading out for a trip on December 26th. They were supposed to go to Michigan to spend time with family before going on a Disney cruise. She said that she woke up around 5:30 a.m. and she went to wake JonBenet up so that they could start getting ready for their trip, but she didn't find her in bed. She says it was after this that she found the note on the stairs. This is a change in events. Her other claim is that as she was walking through the house, she went downstairs, she saw the note, she ran to JonBenet's room and found her missing. So, just a difference of which of those she did first. Through any events that occurred overnight, as well as the panic of the morning in finding their daughter missing, the Ramseys' 9-year-old son, Burke, did not wake up. Allegedly. John Ramsey and Fleet White had to wake him up sometime on the morning of the 26th. Police tried to speak to him as he was one of the few people home during the crime, but John assured police that Burke knew nothing and sent him to stay at the White's home. Again, like, I don't know when that happened, so I don't know if, like, throughout the day Burke is gone or, like, I don't know. Any thoughts here? JonBenet's autopsy was conducted on December 27th. Her official cause of death was named to be asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma. Meaning that she was strangled to death but had also suffered a major skull fracture. On her body, they found an abrasion and blood on her hymen, signifying some sort of sexual assault. Along with her blood in her underwear, they discovered unidentified male DNA. ABC News reported in 1999 that the Boulder police had confirmed that the injuries, like the abrasion and the blood on her hymen, that the injuries were consistent with prior sexual abuse. I don't know if ABC News does or would stand by that now, or if the Boulder police would stand by that now. But in 1999, they reported that as confirmed fact. So, fluorescent lights were used to show some markings on JonBenet's thighs, but it was confirmed to have not been semen. Now, they didn't say... So, like, this is confusing to me. So, there's male DNA, which could be made of, like, anything, I guess, right? Like, could be hair, could be dander, whatever. And then there's what I'm assuming is, like, kind of streaking markings on her thigh, if they thought that it could be semen. I would assume that they would have tested for this and said if so, but, like, could the markings on her thigh have been urine?
From an unknown male?
Not necessarily from her. Like, if you think about, like, some of the theories on what happened here, I would assume that they would have checked for if it was urine. But then, yeah, I mean, in that, if it was, then it's kind of, like, unconnected to the male DNA thing. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't get that. Like, I wish I had more... I guess I wish they could say, like, it's not semen, but it is X. But I don't know. And then, like you say, markings on her thigh, like, and then you say not semen, so I assume it's something similar to semen, but could it be injuries? Like, I don't know. So, again, like, with the urine thing, like, I would assume they would have tested that and said, it's urine?
Yeah.
And it's her urine? But I don't know.
I would think so.
I would hope so. So, no semen was found on or near JonBenet's body at all. The only semen found at the scene, like in the home, was on a blanket inside of the suitcase in the basement. The semen was confirmed to belong to John Andrew Ramsey, John's son from a previous marriage. So, we don't know how old that is. Just left his crusty, dusty semen blanket in this house. Huh?
I said, yeah, that's gross.
Yeah. In this house that he does not live in. So, you know, that's weird. There were also scrape-like wounds on her back, which experts felt like lined up with a sexual assault if she's laying on, like, a hard floor. They also found that her stomach was empty, aside from some pineapple chunks in her upper digestive tract. The placement of these pineapple chunks meant that she had eaten pineapple only hours before the murder, but both John and Patsy insist they never saw her eating pineapple that night. JonBenet's body did not show obvious signs of bruising. She was not covered in blood. However, the medical examiner found that the right side of her skull had been shattered by an enormous blow. This blow left an 8-inch crack in her skull. I will say, when they said crack, I wouldn't call it a crack. There's like a crater, and then a crack following it. So it's a big one. So she had a massive brain hemorrhage, but relatively no external bleeding. It was concluded that she was alive at the time of the blow to her skull and still alive when she was being strangled. The medical examiner would not definitively say whether the strangulation or the strike was the ultimate cause of death, and so he listed them concurrently in that weird, long cause of death. So this medical examiner, Dr. John Meyer, has been accused of majorly mishandling JonBenet's body and the related evidence. It is said that he used the same unsterile clippers to clip each of her fingernails. In fact, it is alleged that the Boulder coroner's office would commonly use the same clippers for different autopsies.
Oh,
And I'm guessing they mean without sterilizing between.
gross.
So, yeah, that's not good. Other critiques include that he did not record lividity, he did not test her core temperature, he did not extract liquid from her eyeballs, all things that would help to determine the time of death. I have read that, like, other people who work in this field said, like, we don't always do that because it is super hard to determine time of death. And so if it isn't, like, obvious or easy, like, we don't usually do that. So maybe that's not that bad.
Yeah.
He also didn't provide precise comments on where blood stains or urine stains were found on JonBenet's clothing. People have noted that the medical examiner did not document any damage from adhesive around JonBenet's mouth. Now, if you believe that Dr. Meyer fell short in many other ways, then it's easy to believe that he could have just not been super thorough, that he just forgot to mark that she had adhesive around her mouth. However, John Ramsey's story is that when he found her in the basement and saw duct tape on her mouth, that he ripped it off of her face because he didn't want duct tape on his kid's mouth, I guess, which is like fair.
Yeah.
So people think that the fact that people, I guess, who think that this medical examiner could be good at his job, think that perhaps since he didn't note damage from adhesive, that there wasn't damage from adhesive, and that maybe John Ramsey's story that he found duct tape on her mouth and ripped it off isn't correct or believable. So hard to know because we spend so much time criticizing everyone in this case, honestly, as we should. So it's like, if police are wrong, do we really care what police think? If the medical examiner is wrong, do we really care what he left out of his report? So it's like, but somehow for a lot of people, the shortcomings of the police and whoever still points them to John Ramsey.
Right.
So, you know. Based on these findings, police are looking for a weapon that could have caused serious blunt force trauma. This is made a little more difficult by the fact that the crime scene has been severely mishandled and everything is contaminated. They tested bats and flashlights and other heavy objects around the home. They found nothing with her blood or DNA on them. They eventually found a red brick in the living room, which had some fibers on it, a golf club in the backyard that had blonde hair on it, and another bat in the backyard that had carpet fibers that matched the Ramseys' carpet. It's at their house, though. In a guest bedroom next to JonBenet's, police found a climbing rope, is what they call it, inside of a paper bag. Both the rope and the bat that was found outside with the carpet fibers, the Ramseys have claimed did not belong to him. It is unclear if the rope was ever tested. I would sure freaking hope so.
Right.
But who knows? What is known, though, is that the Ramseys commonly had guests in their home. And in the case of a full house, many of those guests would sleep in JonBenet's bed. So the opportunity for... I don't know. I'm like, how big is this 6-year-old's bed?
Right.
Like, what? The opportunity for strange items and ultimately strange DNA to show up all around this house is not unheard of. Like, yeah, you don't know who brought this climbing rope, but did you know that you had a blanket in your basement with your adult son's semen on it? Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably because people are staying in your house all the time, you know?
Yeah.
So I know you are familiar, obviously, with this, but what are generally your thoughts on, like, the autopsy and, like, the findings?
I always kind of thought it was Burke that did it. But then when like they talked about the autopsy in the Netflix show, I was like, okay, but they have like all of this DNA that I feel like rules the family out, truly. And but I also feel like so much of this case was mishandled, including the autopsy, that it just leaves like a little bit of room for doubt. Um, but I also think that the autopsy, in my opinion, kind of proves that she was murdered, and then everything else that happened, like the garrote and the ransom note and everything else, was done after the fact. Like she was clearly like hit in the head and killed, and then everything else was done as an afterthought.
It does kind of read as like an accident in ways. Not like an accident that you struck her in the head, but like, was this a sexual assault gone wrong? You tried to incapacitate her, you hit her in the head, you sexually assaulted her, and then you realized, like, oh, she's dying.
Right.
And then you grabbed a garrote, maybe you're putting her out of her misery, you strangle her. Like, it does kind of read as like very messy, very like unplanned. Like, certainly, like, this is not how they intended this to go.
Right.
And then, yeah, of course, the age-old question is always like, chicken or the egg? Did they write the ransom note? They intended to take her, but then something went wrong? Did they kill her, but then they wrote the ransom note after? Like, it's just like, who freaking knows? But yeah, I do think that, like, the strike to the head plus sexual assault plus strangulation with an object nearby reads as very disorganized.
Yes.
And super, like, panicked. Like, accident happened. Oh no, what do I do?
Right. Which then I think makes me think of the family again.
That's fair. Yeah. So, because this death has now been ruled a homicide, the strategy has changed. Police are collecting evidence from around the home, although it is nearly all contaminated. They also requested handwriting samples from John and Patsy Ramsey to compare to the ransom letter. Eventually, they would take handwriting samples from 73 people in total.
Jesus.
They took 5 separate samples from Patsy Ramsey, plus collected samples of her writing from throughout the home. So they call them like historical samples. They had just like old pieces of paper that her and John had written on. John Ramsey's handwriting ruled him out from having written the ransom letter. Patsy was not as easily ruled out. In fact, according to Steve Thomas, out of those over 70 handwriting samples, Patsy was determined by experts to be the only one who could have possibly penned that letter. Her handwriting wasn't a match, but they also weren't able to rule her out.
Okay.
Steve Thomas wrote, quote, "The most significant evidence in this case was the pen, the pad, the ransom note, and the handwriting. And when we finished an investigation after 18 months and presented our case to the district attorney's office, presumably for them to move it forward, one statistic that was cited in that presentation was that out of 73 people whose handwriting was examined in this case, there was only one whose handwriting showed evidence to suggest authorship, who was in the home that night, who couldn't be eliminated as the author, and that was Patsy Ramsey." End quote. Again, like, it feels like we're saying it could be her, plus she's in the house. Now, if you think this is a stranger, then her being in the house is actually not a factor. Like, but out of the 73 people they looked at, hers is the closest. But that doesn't mean that the killer was included in that 73, I guess. So, I don't know. And we'll get to this, but Steve Thomas is possibly not the most credible source. But
is anyone in this case?
Steve Thomas is maybe the least credible source. But I would like to assume that when he's like talking numbers from this case, that he is probably right. But you know, take it with a grain of salt. When asked for handwriting samples, John first provided the police with 2 notebook pads from their home, one belonging to him and the other to Patsy. The handwriting expert at the police station turned the page and found what clearly seemed to be the start of the ransom note, still in the notepad. It read Mr. and Mrs. and what looks like the start of an R. It appears that the note writer was practicing in that notebook before they eventually wrote the final note, which did also come from that same notebook. So JonBenet's murderer wrote the ransom note after coming into the Ramsey home using their pens and their paper. They also used Patsy's art supplies to create the garrote that was used to strangle JonBenet. So other than maybe the object used to inflict trauma on her skull, it seems that all items used in this crime were found inside of the Ramsey home.
Right.
Which again could lend itself to just like, this wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
Or it's very strange for people to come into a home entirely unprepared.
Right.
And if they brought in this climbing rope, which is like the insinuation of this rope we've never seen before, why didn't they use it?
Yeah. Like professional murderers.
Mm-hmm.
They brought nothing with them.
Yeah. The family and investigators also started realizing that the note writer used phrases from famous crime movies in the letter. In the 1971 movie Dirty Harry, starring Clint Eastwood, you can find the lines, "If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. The delivery will be very exhausting, so I advise you to be well rested. And if I even think you're being followed, the girl dies." In fact, it was discovered that Dirty Harry had recently played on TBS in Boulder about a month prior to JonBenet's murder. In the 1986 film Ruthless People, there is a verbal ransom given in which the kidnapper says, "Mr. Stone, listen carefully." The demands of splitting up the bills into 100s or 20s seem similar to the ransom in this movie. In the 1993 movie Speed, one character instructs another, "Don't attempt to grow a brain." The 1995 film Nick of Time aired in Boulder on the night of JonBenet's murder. The movie follows the story of a political faction that kidnaps a 6-year-old girl. That's weird. That's very, very weird.
That to me though sounds like somebody's like, oh, like I know this 6-year-old girl or this family with a 6-year-old girl. I could kill her or something, do something to her, and use this as like the cover for it. Why?
Right. Like they were watching the movie and they were like, "Oh, I'm obsessed with a 6-year-old girl."
Yeah.
Me too.
I know a 6-year-old.
I love JonBenet Ramsey. I could maybe not even kill her, but I could go like have her, take her, have sex with her, something, and I could just say it was a political faction.
Not have sex with
her. Well, they did.
Well, but sex is consensual.
Well, in their mind, but yes, okay. I could sexually assault her. But they, or to your point, did something happen, accidental, and then they like used their little brain and they said, "Oh,
they grew a brain.
I've seen something like this before. Let me write this fake note and I'll be a political faction." Like, yeah, that'll be believable.
I believed it in the movie.
Yeah, I fell for it. Why wouldn't they? In August of 1997, the Ramseys put an ad out in a newspaper letting the public know of the connections they had found in the ransom letter to these movies. They believed that the killer had an obsession with these kinds of movies. Crime/ransom movies. Many people also wondered why the kidnapper or killer would ask for such a specific amount of money, $118,000. But also such a small amount of money in retrospect when talking to a multimillionaire.
Right.
When asked, the Ramseys could not think of any significance to the number. Later, it would come to light that John Ramsey had received a bonus at the end of 1996 for $118,117.50. The Ramseys themselves would later point to Psalm 118 as a possible influence, wondering if the number was a biblical reference. This idea could have stemmed from the fact that there was a Bible in the Ramseys' home that was open to a psalm when the police searched the house. However, the Bible was open to Psalm 35 and 36, not to any passage containing the number 118. John alleged, get this, in 1998, but again in 2024 at CrimeCon, that Psalm 118 is a very vengeful psalm that says the word victory multiple times. And it had the phrase saved by the cornerstone, which he connected to the SBTC signature. The start of this very vengeful psalm, though, begins, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, his mercy endures forever."
I love that one.
Upon my reading of the entire thing, I did not find the word victory anywhere. So
I was gonna say, aren't Psalms like the point is that they're kind of short, so like, no. Oh, okay.
They're like one psalm could be like 100 verses. Like, they're not short. So it's possible that in some translations, somewhere, the word victory is in there, but I'm not sure that it's like every other line. And I wasn't really getting vengeful vibes.
But that saved by the cornerstone, that's actually interesting.
It is interesting, and I don't know of any version that says those words in that order.
Oh, never mind.
But totally there could be. Like, but I usually like the cornerstone. I don't know. So, but I do think that is like, if nothing, a good case of coincidence. So, and then kind of like we've been talking about, the questions come in. Did the note writer always intend to kill JonBenet? Had they already killed her when they wrote the note? Did they actually really want the money? Were they hoping that like they wouldn't find her body and they'd send them the money? Was it a way to prolong the family finding JonBenet? If they were busy on this kidnapping chase, they wouldn't look. Then this person can get away. What the heck is the reason for a ransom letter if there's no kidnapping? I think that's like the root of this case. What the hell happened here? Since JonBenet's murder, detectives say that they have followed up on every lead that has come into the department. This racks up to more than 21,000 tips, letters, and emails. Detectives have traveled to at least 19 states to interview more than 1,000 individuals in connection to this crime. By 1997, they had over 1,600 persons of interest to pursue in this case. In 2003, the male DNA found in JonBenet's underwear was tested against John and Burke Ramsey, and I believe John Andrew, and it was not a match. It was also entered into the CODIS database with over 1 million DNA samples, and it did not match anyone in there. Lead investigator James Kolar said in 2016, so we're going to move up a little, that there were 6 separate DNA profiles found at the scene, all belonging to unknown individuals, meaning we did not connect them to anyone. That made sense. Back in 1997, Lou Smith, a retired Colorado Springs detective, came out of retirement to assist on this case. In 1998, he presented his findings to the Boulder police, explaining that the evidence he had found pointed away from the Ramseys. There was growing animosity between the Boulder police and the district attorney's office. Many on the police force thought the Ramseys were absolutely responsible for the murder of their daughter, but District Attorney Alex Hunter disagreed. Steve Thomas describes the relationship between the Ramseys and Alex Hunter as cozy. He also says that Hunter was known for his lax sentences for rapists and murderers in Boulder County. That's a great reputation.
Yeah, I would not want to be known for that.
No. In the end, both Lou Smith and Steve Thomas would leave this investigation, even though they themselves had completely opposing views on what happened. Smith felt the police never considered the intruder theory, and Thomas believed wholeheartedly that Patsy Ramsey was JonBenet's murderer and that the DA's office interfered in proving this. There was a grand jury on September 15th, 1998, who found that they had heard sufficient evidence to charge the Ramsey family with behaviors that led to their daughter's death. Alex Hunter ultimately chose not to charge the Ramseys, as he felt there was not enough for criminal conviction. So, next time, we will be getting into more detail about the Ramsey family's past, allegations made against them, and why so many people find them to be the most suspicious people in this case.
Yeah.
Thoughts on this is like our background, everything that happened episode. Any thoughts before we start getting into like the whodunit of it all?
I just think like the pineapple is so interesting, and I think it's like one of those things that they're like, no, she did not eat pineapple with milk. She did not eat that at all. And it's like one of those things is like, okay, why would they need to lie about that?
Right.
So like,
why would you need to lie about reading her a bedtime story?
Right. So like,
or not.
So did she really not eat the pineapple with milk?
Right.
Like, I don't
know. Did her killer feed her pineapple?
Right.
Force feed her pineapple? Like,
and that's like, I think people are like, oh, like Burke got up with her and they were eating the pineapple together, and it's like,
yeah,
I don't get that pineapple thing, but
yeah,
I think that's all my thought for now.
Cool. I think like we'll obviously get more into this, but it's so hard for me to view any of the DNA as actually like ruling someone out.
Right.
When I don't know how they collected it.
Right.
I don't know how they stored it. I don't trust these people.
We don't even know what it is.
Right. And like, it could be, I mean, again, like, this is all assuming that they're testing it against the people who were in the house that day. So Fleet White's wife, Burke, like, and if it's coming up for nobody, is it possible that it's a bad sample?
Right.
Or are we missing something and they're saying, oh no, we found all of those people's DNA, but these are 6 extra people. But then it's like, that's not been made super clear to me. And then now what do we do with 6 separate extra people? Did a 6-person political faction actually come in there?
I know you can like put, I know that like with CODIS, you can like put a DNA sample in and it'll tell you if it's a match to someone in CODIS.
Right.
But like, does it work in the reverse where you could put like a known criminal's DNA into CODIS and it can tell you if it matches like an unknown sample?
I imagine that it would work. I mean, assuming that all of the criminal people's DNA should already be in there.
Yeah.
And then you put JonBenet, like the DNA from the case in there, then if later you add in a new criminal's, I would assume that it would like ping to that.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah. Like I would assume you don't have to like keep re-adding it in.
Yeah.
You know? But I don't freaking know. And like, I don't know, like CODIS in 1998 versus now or whatever. So, and then how can we even run other DNA tests? How have y'all been storing this?
Yeah.
I don't know nothing. I don't y'all some quacks.
You couldn't even secure the crime scene.
Yeah. Just clipping her nails willy-nilly. Okay. Well, so yeah, be prepared for 3 parts, and so sorry you have to wait 2 weeks between each of them. But yeah.
Bye.
Bye.